there were already contacts between our school. They were mainly informal in matters of speaking and so on. But then some of them were more important. One of the people who will be here today is one of our faculty members, Arthur Romano, who was the Rotary Peace Fellow. So we've known about Rotary for a long time, and we've been increasingly excited about Rotary for a number of reasons, but the main one being that there are not very many international organizations that are interested in peace, which are not agencies of some government. And the notion that there would be this very important international organization with a presence on all 5 continents, with strong interest in peace and conflict resolution, not really beholden to anybody but themselves. It was very exciting, a very exciting idea. I mean, it's for the same reason I found myself in June at the Vatican, talking about the possibility of peacemaking in Ukraine and elsewhere with people at the Vatican, because the Church, the Catholic Church, is another international organization that's not beholden to any particular government, and perhaps able to act, independently and constructively in international affairs. Well, we know that that's true of Rotary, which, as somebody, maybe Peter Kyle, said, has peace built into its DNA. So we're very interested in seeing what happens with this relationship, and might have gone on for a long time being interested, but sort of talking around the subject, if it hadn't been for David Fishman. David Fishman, who, as I'm sure all of you know, is a lawyer with a long-standing interest in international peace and conflict resolution. David and I found ourselves last year, in fact, 3 years ago, before the start of COVID, we found ourselves talking about possible programs in which various organizations that he was interested in and the Carter School could work together. And during the subsequent period, David found himself more and more involved in Rotary, and through his good offices, we met other people involved in Rotary, and through David and Mary Clark, really made this connection happen. And we're very, very grateful to David and Mary both for doing that, and delighted that he's with us right now. Let's get started with our talk. Everybody has agreed to keep their remarks quite short so that we'll have time to hear from everybody who wants to speak. There are 35 participants here already, and there are more joining. So we want to make sure we give everybody a chance who wants to speak a chance to speak. And to begin with, I'd like to ask Peter Kyle to lead off. Peter has had a remarkable career, which it would take too long to summarize. So I'm not going to summarize it at all, except to say that he has been a Rotary International director from 2020 to 2022. That he started off life as a New Zealander, and also a UVA law school graduate, I should say, but has been involved in beginning in law, in matters involving international law with the Asian Development Bank in Manila, and then with more for a longer period of time with the World Bank in Washington, D.C. for 20 years. Peter then became one of the most active. He's a member of one of the Rotary clubs, Rotary Hill in Washington, D.C., but he's one of the most active Rotarians that I know, and a person I always enjoy talking to and listening to. So I'm going to stop talking myself and ask him to take over. Peter, if you don't mind, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Richard, for that very generous and gracious introduction. Nice of you to make a reference to the University of Virginia. in a university context, it's probably not a good idea to refer to some other university, but thank you for that nice reference. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm excited about the potential for a collaboration, a closer collaboration between Rotary and the Carter School. The Carter Center has a long history of involvement in peace and conflict resolution, as does Rotary. Richard, as you mentioned, peace is in our DNA, so we have something very much in common. What I'd like to do today is to give you a bit of a thumbnail sketch of Rotary's journey in peace for the last 100-something years, to give you an idea as to why you might want to consider partnering with Rotary as we move forward. So Rotary started in Chicago in 1905. It started off fairly quietly. By 1910, there were still only 10 Rotary clubs, and the focus was on service. The idea was to bring service to local communities. That was the community essence of Rotary, but the overriding international issue at that time was the possibility that war might break out in Europe. The forces of nationalism were getting stronger and stronger. And as you all know, in 1914, World War I broke out. England and Germany declared war on each other, and the rest of the world became involved. It was a nasty, brutal, terrible 4-year war. A lot of death, a lot of destruction. After the war came to an end, the focus on Rotary and Rotary clubs became very much, what can we do to prevent a catastrophe like that from happening again? Lots of meetings were held, committees were established, and in 1921, at the International Convention in Edinburgh, Scotland, Rotarians adopted a resolution calling for Rotarians to advance international understanding, goodwill, and peace. And those words, international understanding, goodwill, and peace, have since been enshrined in our official object. They form the basis of all the charitable work that we do under the aegis of the Rotary Foundation. And it was a pleasure this year to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the signing of the ratification of that resolution. So right from 100 years ago, peace has been in our DNA. During the 1920s and 30s, Rotary grew very quickly. By 1939, there were 5,000 Rotary clubs around the world with around 150,000 Rotarian members. Rotary had become an enormous international organization. Rotary clubs and districts, for the most part, consisted of, at that time, males only. We didn't admit females until the late 80s. And you were required to be a person of some substance to be a member of Rotary. A principal or a partner or a doctor or someone of substance in the community. So when the local clubs met, when the local district met, it was a very significant event for that community. And when Rotarians came together internationally, it was an extremely significant international event. Let me give you an example. In 1940, the Rotary International Convention was held in Havana, Cuba. Just as an aside, you may be interested to know that in 1940, there were 58 Rotary clubs in Cuba. Sadly, at the present time, there are none, although we hope that that will change before too long. At that convention, Rotarians adopted a resolution calling for, amongst other things, respect for human rights. That was the first time those words, respect for human rights, had entered into the international lexicon. And that became the basis for the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, signed in 1948, arguably one of the most significant international documents signed in the last century. In 1942, a number of senior Rotarians met in London. They were concerned about the impact of the Second World War on education, on scientific research, on cultural norms and values and traditions and monuments. That led to the adoption of a resolution, which in turn led to the formation of UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. 2 years later, in 1944, after President Truman and Prime Minister Churchill had decided that the time had come to develop an organization that would forever outlaw war, Rotary was one of a very small number of organizations invited to send lawyers and other experts to work alongside officials from China, the former Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And when the United Nations Charter was signed in San Francisco in June of 1945, 49 out of the 800 delegates were Rotarians. So our links with the United Nations, the world's premier peacebuilding organization, very strong and go way back. In fact, just another little aside, in 1946, the United Nations decided to establish an internship program. The idea was to bring young students from all over the world to New York for a few weeks to observe the workings of this new international body. Great idea, but there was no money in the budget. What did they do? They approached Rotary. And Rotary made a grant of $18,000 to fund the first United Nations internship program. Our links with the United Nations continued. In the mid-80s, we developed an association with UNICEF, with the World Health Organization, with the Center for Diseases Control in Atlanta, to initiate the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Eradicating polio is Rotary's #1 external priority. And we are very, very close to eradicating polio. In the late 1980s, increasingly Rotary clubs were reaching out to UN entities, UNESCO, UNICEF, UN Environment, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Rotary decided to establish a Rotary representative network. And we now have 16 entities in this network. And Rotary has assigned individual Rotarians to act as our ambassadors with a small a in the cities in which those entities are based. So we have 2 in Rome, 2 in Brussels at the European Union, 3 in Geneva, where the European headquarters of the UN is based, 2 in London, 2 in Paris with UNESCO, 6 in New York, 4 in Washington, DC, and others spread around the world. In Nairobi at the African headquarters of the UN, in Cairo with the Arab Union, in Addis Ababa with the African Union, and in other parts of the world, Manila, Abidjan. So we've had very strong links with the United Nations ever since that 1990. In the late 1990s, Rotary decided to establish a Rotary Peace Center program. We partnered with 6 prominent universities around the world, each of which was renowned for its peace and conflict resolution curriculum. And that led to a partnership which to this day has been a very successful initiative. We have over 1,600 Rotary Peace Fellows that have been given either a 2-year fellowship or a professional development program certificate of 3 months to further their knowledge and education and understanding of peace and conflict resolution. We have Rotary Peace Fellows in academia, in the United Nations, in the State Department, in the World Bank, and in many parts of the world in fields really doing tremendous work. I think long after we've eradicated polio, and as I said, we will be eradicating polio, the Rotary Peace Center program may well prove to be one of Rotary's most significant legacies. In 2010, we refashioned the Rotary Foundation and developed 6 areas of focus. based loosely on the Millennium Development Goals, which were published by the UN in 2000. That included peace and conflict resolution. And we now have, since then, have had one more area of focus has been added, environment. And the work of the Rotary Foundation is designed to finance projects in one or other of those 7 areas of focus. Last year, Rotarians individually contributed over $430 million to help fund global grants and district grants throughout the Rotary world in one or more of those areas of focus. We've also established Rotary Action Groups for Peace and Conflict Resolution. We have partnerships with different organizations. Some years ago, we developed a partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace, based in Australia. Many of you will be familiar with this, with the Institute. It was created to research the economic cost of war, and it led to a publication called the World Peace Index, which has become quite an accepted text in academic circles, measuring the impact of peace under different categories for the last, I think, the last 12 or 15 years. We've also partnered with the US Peace Corps. We've partnered with Mediators Beyond Borders. We have a lot of other peace-oriented links. We have peace conferences. We have peace symposia. We have a peace academy. Many Rotarians ask, what can I, as an individual, do to promote peace and peace building? Well, we have, with the help of the Institute for Economics and Peace, developed a peace academy. And you can go online and complete a 3-hour course and become a certified peace builder. And in the course of that process, you will learn all sorts of practical ways in which individuals at the local level and at national and global level can contribute to a more peaceful environment. We're very proud of the focus of Rotary on peace building and conflict prevention. Many of our global grants, of which we have several thousand each year, have a peace dimension. We are involved in all sorts of initiatives which are designed to overcome partisan divide, try and reduce the level of polarization, which we see in this country and indeed all over the world. Rotary is a very large peace-building organization. We have 1.4 million members spread across 37,000 clubs in over 200 countries and territorial jurisdictions. We have an enormous footprint. We have a rich history of peace-building, conflict prevention. As I think Richard said, peace is very much in our DNA, and I suspect that is the same for the Carter School. So that's what I wanted to say by way of just a general summary of Rotary's peace-building focus. As I said, we are delighted to be on this panel today. We are excited about the potential for a partnership between Rotary and the Carter School. The Carter School has an amazing reputation for quality in this area, and it would be an honor for Rotary to join forces with the Carter School. So thank you for this opportunity. And Richard, with that, may I pass it over to you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. Thanks for those very interesting remarks. I'm still thinking I've had this thought for months and months now about Rotary, that there still needs to be a book or something about how this interest in peace developed in Rotary, and how it became structured. It's just a fascinating story, but the way you tell it is very good. So thank you very much for that. I want to say we now got about 40 participants here, and the meeting is turning into a kind of who's who of in peace studies as well as in Rotary. We have people here we definitely want to be able to hear from. And so we will move right along. I was going to go to Bill next. David, are you itchy to talk? David Fishman?
Yeah, let me just throw in 30 seconds here.
I thought you might. Go ahead.
Peter spoke eloquently about Rotary's history and accomplishments in peace building. With more time, he probably could have stressed the fact that Rotary has a comparative advantage in peace building. Rotary doesn't have the money to solve many of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Rotary does have the resources to play a unique role in advancing peace building. The only other thing I'll say at this point is that I see on this listing some distinguished Rotarians and partners who have various takes on how we do this. And today's meeting is the first, hopefully, of many where Rotarians and the Carter School will begin concrete discussions about these matters.
All right, David, the floor will be open for you to speak anytime you like as we go on. But I'm glad to see you, and thank you for that. And Bill Dent, let's hear from you now. Bill Dent is one of the principal leaders of Rotary in Washington, D.C. He's a Washington native, a Maryland graduate. He's done all sorts of work in international development and in finance. Has a very strong interest in environmental matters and in ways of dealing with an environmental crisis. It's been a real pleasure getting to know him too through David. So Bill, we'd love to hear anything you have to say.
Thank you very much, Rich. I will be brief because I ceded part of my time to Peter, because Peter is our champion at the level of Rotary International in the peace arena. He says it so well. And I've always said, I was in the Peace Corps, and I've always said the best thing I ever did was join the Peace Corps because it started my career. And we have this fabulous partnership with peace, with the Peace Corps. And that's a whole other story, but there's a huge connection between the two. But it's been a real pleasure working with David over the last year and a half or so, and Peter Kyle, both, in creating an initiative here based in Washington, D.C., and we're building a coalition of D.C. Rotary clubs precisely to work with all of you, and we hope with the Carter School. And this is a great dialogue that you've helped us start. So I just want to say that as immediate past president of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., we're very interested in working with the Carter School and Rotary International. And any way that we can help, we will be delighted. We have created within our club an international peace initiative. Peter has been the lead on that. I mean, it's been David with the support of Peter. David was with the Alexandria Rotary Club, and as we got more and more involved with this, he moved over to our club. But we plan to have a coalition of the DC area clubs. We hope that this coalition can help with this dialogue and building this relationship. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks very much, Bill. We were going to hear at this point from Al Jubitz, but we're not going to hear from Al Jubitz because he's been caught up in the mess that they call the airline system right now. I had a flight of my own over the weekend. I know what that feels like. So he's not available to speak with us right now. I just want to say something quick about that. However, to say Al Jubitz, who I'm sure most of you know, is from Portland, Oregon, and has been a philanthropist in the peace business for a long time and has been a very important Rotarian for a long time. Al is extremely excited about this developing relationship, and in fact has asked us to hold a meeting on it at our conference center at Point of View, which we will be talking to you about further, to start working out details of what a collaboration between the two institutions like ours would look like. Thanks to David and Mari, we're going to be able to hire somebody to help work that relationship out at the same time. So things are moving along. And Al, I'm sorry he's not here because, Al, he's so enthusiastic and he's got so many ideas. But we're thinking of him, and also thinking of Larry Cooley, who wanted to be here, who's also on the road, and has had many conversations now with us about it, and is very excited about working out the details of a relationship. So although we'll miss those people, we know they're here in spirit. And let me ask a few of the Carter School people who are here to say something. We have our dean who will kind of bat cleanup. But to begin with, I'd like to ask my colleague Karina Korostelina to say something. Karina and I have been co-workers and friends now for a good many years, and have had all sorts of academic and international political adventures together. She is the head of our research committee, among other things. She's the author of, actually, she's written, I think, more books than I have, and she's a whole lot younger than I am. She writes wonderful stuff about identity, and she writes wonderful stuff about peace and war, and what to do about, practically speaking, about peacemaking on an international basis. So Karina, if you would say a little something, that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much, Rich, for your very kind words, and I'm very honored to be in this group of people who all very distinguished in their field, but all together thinking about peace. I really see this growing partnership is very important for our school, of course, but it's also very synergetic, because there are a lot of opportunities of Rotarians who have their own clubs in majority of the cities and countries, to be on the ground, to really do work which is important because they live there, they understand it. And at the same time, we as a school, we develop very strong relationship between theory and practice. And I think what make our school really different from majority of other educational institutions is this emphasis of constant reinforcement between theory and practice. We are the best academic institution in the field, but we also very strongly concentrating on practice. In comparison with many other academics, we call ourselves pra-academics, and many of us work across the globe in different places. I just got back like 3 days ago from Lebanon, working there on municipal internship program, where we were able to bring together 25 young people who created projects. It's very Rotarian, basically. Each of them we taught them how to develop projects, how to build communities around these projects, how to create the stakeholders engagement. And now the 5 of them successfully, after the town halls, realizing their projects in communities, and we see more coming up. It's a real change which is going there. We work in places like Ukraine, of course. We have multiple projects in Ukraine right now. We have projects in African countries. We have now a project in Serbia, which also bring universities together with communities in order to develop centers for tolerance, especially related to Kosovo issue and related to migration, Syrian immigrants and others. So as you see, as a school, and I can go again and again about the projects, our faculty developed multiple projects in Caucasus. Susan Allen was one of the major force behind peace building activities. You know about peace agreement in Africa, which was developed by our members of our school. So I think the strength of our relationship is because you have people on the ground who understand, who work, who want to be engaged with communities. And we have a lot of our expertise on how to bring change, how to work in communities, how to deal with very sensitive issues of identity-based conflict, of social division. And I think this will be a very successful way where we will learn from each other. We are not positioning ourselves, at least from my point of view, as somebody who possesses knowledge and skills. We believe you possess a lot of, especially this. Thank you, Peter, for this wonderful story. I'm dealing with, I was listening with a lot of interest. So I think, again, I'm very excited about this partnership, and I see a lot of our role in helping Rotarians to develop strategies and practices of specific projects. So working together, bringing together stakeholders to realize and bring social change in places where peace is in need.
Good, Karina, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I was now about to go to our dean, Alp Özerdem, but before I do that, I noticed that Arthur Romano is here, and Arthur actually has been a Rotary Peace Fellow, and I thought he might want to say something briefly before we go to Alp. So Arthur, can we get a little comment from you?
Yeah, hello everyone. This is an exciting moment for me. I was a Rotary Peace Fellow from 2004 to 2006. Nice to see you, Kyle. I just was looking back at our emails when we were having some discussions that echo this, and I looked back and I saw the date was 2017. So this, I think, has been a long time in the making, and in a way, this is like going to a family reunion and seeing two people that you love have just kind of met each other and are having a really rich conversation. This is a long time, I think, in the making, and I just want to make some comments, just a couple minutes of comments based on my experience, as a Rotary Peace Fellow. First of all, that was a really transformative experience, meeting a group of peacemakers who were studying conflict and committed to practice all over the world. And I maintain those relationships to this day. But what I learned in the process too is that Rotary, collaborating with Rotary is really important in terms of what we can learn and do together in learning from Rotary. And that's what I'm struck by in this moment, especially in relation to the Carter School, which is one of the most dynamic places I've ever been around the study of peace and conflict. And there's a couple things that come to mind. One is, this network of people, as has been mentioned, all over the world. Rotary has that kind of grassroots network of people who are interested in peace, but don't consider themselves experts in peace, but have expertise that can help. And I was immediately struck by that. And I've had a chance to speak at Rotary clubs from New York to the coast of California and Thailand and other places. And I'm always struck by the desire for action, the humility of the people involved in Rotary, people who often are pretty established in their lives, and it's not about having to kind of prove something or get credit for it, but want to get things done. And those, for me, are that's the most refreshing people to work with. And just lastly, what I'll say is I just think this is such a potent moment. So I'm grateful to our dean and to Rich, everybody else who's been working on this, because I think in a way, Rotary's experience in addressing polio is very instructive for this moment in a way that we perhaps in this field are not operating at the scale and systematic implementation that's necessary to kind of transform the dynamics of violence. In my area of focus, where I look at urban violence prevention in some of America's most violent cities, we see sporadic activity in areas, but we don't see really holistic interventions that are sustained and to scale over time. And Rotarians understand this because that's what it takes to do this work in the public health sphere. To eradicate polio means putting attention all over the planet, identifying areas where people need support and not coming in and disappearing overnight. I think in many ways it echoes where we are in this moment with peace building. So this is very exciting, and I think the Carter School, where it's very ripe for collaboration with an organization like Rotary. I think the time is right, and so I'm glad to be joining you in this moment. So it seems like a powerful moment for us to come together.
Well
Arthur,
said, Arthur.
thank you very much, Arthur. And you didn't even plug your book.
I'll send a link for anybody.
You could mention the title. You could at least mention the title.
Yeah, I just had a book published a few weeks ago called Racial Justice and Nonviolence Education, Building the Beloved Community One Block at a Time, in which I look at a couple cities that are deeply violence affected and how people are organizing on the ground there.
Yeah, please put that in the chat, Arthur. And I see David would like to say something.
Go ahead, David.
And, very briefly, just to pick up on what Arthur just said, the idea of scaling is something of particular importance to Larry Cooley, whom Rich previously alluded to. Larry was sort of the intro to the closing remarks of past President Shekhar Mehta at the recent Houston convention. And what Shekhar said is that Rotary needs to figure out a way to become the organization, the implementing actor of use for corporate, for foundation, and for international development agencies. Larry has a great deal of experience in helping to coordinate those sorts of things. And an increasing number of Rotarians like Shekhar recognize that the crises we face internationally, domestically, and environmentally require new scaling up of our efforts. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, David. Well, there are also some alums of our program here I'd love to have speak, but not this minute. We want Alp to get a word in edgewise first, but Michael Shank is here. And I'm delighted to see that Giselle Humani Ober, who I haven't seen for I don't know how many years, is here, a student of longstanding, an alum of longstanding. But before we get to that sort of thing, Alp, let me turn to you. Our dean is Alpaslan Özerdem, known to us all as Alp, who came to us 3 years ago, 3 years plus, from the UK, where he was running the Peace and Conflict program at the University of Coventry. Alp's a native of Turkey. He has enormous international experience, both academic and practical. He's done peacemaking in a couple of dozen countries on the ground. And one of the great things he's done here, he's done a number of terrific things as dean here, but one of the great things has been to further erase the boundary between theory and practice, or I should really say replace that boundary fence with an interactive system that permits us to actually do praxis, to feed the results of theory back into practice and vice versa, and to create a feedback loop that means something, that's meaningful. Alp has created peace labs, which are doing that in our institution already. And he's been a wonderful representative of our institution generally, and I'm very happy that he's here to say something. So Alp, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rich, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Peace Week. It's the first day of the Peace Week, something that we organize twice a year. And I'm really excited about this initiative that you just heard about, the partnership between Carter School and Rotary International and Rotarians in general. And Rich, thanks so much for organizing this event. And also, thank you so much to all our speakers before me, especially those from Rotary world, and for sharing their valuable time with us, and my colleagues Karina and Arthur. Thanks so much to you all. Right, so let me just reflect on what we are trying to do with this partnership. And in fact, my colleagues has really said so much already. And my question is really okay, we are thinking about this partnership, but why now? I think that's quite an important question we need to respond. Why it really matters to think about this partnership now? Because once we draw up that picture, then the need for such a partnership becomes much clearer, and significance of it that I think we grapple with all the challenges we are facing. So I have really three main points to make in that. And then I want to say a little bit about how we are handling this partnership, the opportunity. It's a great opportunity, and we need to handle it carefully because so many people are putting their time, energy, and resources to make this happen. So I want to make sure that it takes off successfully, and also I want to say a little bit about the kind of the future of this potential partnership and what we can do with that. Right. So these are kind of like the main issues I want to cover. But why now? Let me start with that. So the first one, I think, is the urgency of such a partnership and why it is needed now. So when you think about what's happening right now on planet Earth, geopolitics, global geopolitics are being shifted as we speak. The war in Ukraine and the energy crisis and all sorts of other things, almost like the future of the world is being rewritten. And that's kind of creating lots of new risks and challenges that we need to be prepared for. We have the climate change, we have the natural resource depletions that might increase the risks of different types of armed conflict, mass migration, etc. Right? So there are all these threats emerging. And also there's the increased level of militarization, polarization, autocratization in different countries, but also globally, right? So that's going to really create new questions, new challenges for all of us. And the way the kind of the mind-boggling speed of changes in technology and the way technology is used for destructive and violent means, I think all new threats that we should be prepared for. So the urgency for this partnership is that we are already in a new world, and that new world is not going to be an easy place. So what can we do about that? And and how we can respond to those challenges effectively. So that's my number one proposition, why this partnership is important. The second one is about the scale. David mentioned this, and I think it's so important. Scaling up our work in peacemaking, conflict prevention, and peace building under the umbrella of that peace work, because the size of the problem we are facing such that as individual institutions working on different aspects of peacemaking, conflict prevention, etc., what we do don't seem to be enough in responding to current challenges. And considering that tomorrow's world will be even more challenging, I think we need to be proactive about that. So scaling up is a must. But the question is, how can we do that, right? So as individual institutions, we all want to scale up, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the goal, and that's what we heard from Peter Kyle and the long history of Rotary and all the amazing work that has been done by them, all their different programs on peace and improving the chances of peace in different ways. And but clearly, we have that big question of scaling up in a meaningful way. So we are really talking about this transformational change, right? So I think that's the ultimate thing, because if we just continue as individual institutions in what we do, in our current status quo, probably I think it's safe to say that we are not going to be that effective. We are going to do wonderful work. There's no doubt about that individually, but the potential, what that may look like if we start to work together. And I think that is the only way forward for scaling up. And I see that the next 10 to 20 years, this will be probably the most critical issue, whether or not peace actors will manage to talk to each other, to work together, and to build peace together. I mean, it may sound like paradoxical, you know, and it may sound like, oh well, of course that could happen, but the experience of like last 50 to 100 years, all these peace actors working, you know, in different ways, shows that I don't think we really talk to each other enough. I don't think we work together enough, right? So I think that's scaling up. The formula for that, for me, you know, is true very much that whether or not we'll be able to work together. And the third point I want to make is that, so Peter Kyle and others mentioned the way Rotary is a service organization, works you know, on peace, and peace being in its DNA, and the thousands of clubs, 1.4 million members. I mean, that is just like an amazing structure, a peace organization we are talking about here. And in fact, the whole idea of the Carter School being able to work with Rotary, you know, on peace excites me so much that, you know, like, you know, I want this process to start ASAP because we can do so much there. But how that partnership could look like, let me just say a few things on that. So as a Carter School, we are a school of 40 years, that my colleagues mentioned, and we started as a small center with few faculty in 1980s, turned into an institute and school, and 2 years ago we changed our name, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution, and that has given us a completely new stimulus in a way, because how wouldn't you otherwise, like the names of Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, you know, those two individuals who have been doing so much for peace globally, and in the, you know, mid 1990s, they are still active, they are still working, so inspirational. So we are, as a Carter School, we are very much planning our future with that kind of sense of impact, that sense of relevance. So as Karina mentioned, scholarship is very important for us, but what we want to do is our footprint on at the level of community impact. We already got so much happening in that space, but we want to scale up. So I'm looking at this partnership, one, as a great opportunity to learn from the experience of Rotary and what Rotary has been doing over the years. But then I'm looking at this partnership from the perspective that the Carter School could contribute to scale up Rotary's work, perhaps to redefine, to reimagine some of the work. So that kind of partnership that could enable both parties, you know, for that scaling up. And then I think within that, over the last 18 months with David Fishman, Rich, myself, David, a number of Rotarians from the DC area, we've been in an exciting dialogue. We've been talking about this issue, how that partnership could be structured in an effective way. So I think the issue here is that Rotary has done so much on peace already. We are looking at the most meaningful way that the Carter School could enter and work with Rotary and contribute to that process. And the complexity of it with the Rotary International and the central programs, as well as all the peacemaking, peace building programs undertaken by Rotary clubs, it's not an easy feat, really, just when you think about it. You got to be really well balanced, well articulating, in terms of what that engagement would look like. I think we've made quite a big progress, to be honest, over the last 18 months. And I'd like to thank both David and Marie for their support for that process and what they're intending to do, which, as Rich mentioned, we want to initiate a project here at the Carter School to really map out what that partnership could look like. So as earlier on, I said that we want to be careful, and that's very much the purpose. We want to work 3 to 4 months, do that mapping, prioritization, identification of possible partnership pathways, and decide what that would look like. I know it sounds like a little bit long-winding process, but I think it is important to undertake that process. So in a way, this meeting is the soft launching of that process after 18 months of discussions. So I'm really excited that we are at that point and we'll be able to implement that project very soon. So in 4 to 5 months' time, we can come back to you, and perhaps we could do that in our Spring Peace Week in April to say, look, this is the study we undertook, and these are the recommendations made by that project. And here we are, there's a great opportunity for partnership. What do you think? And how we can do this? And within that, obviously, fundraising aspect will be really important. So that's kind of a pathway number one. Another one, as Rich mentioned, we've been working with Al-Jubitz and his foundation to initiate a similar process, but more kind of like the imagining and encapsulating ideas in a different way. So in our conference and retreat center point of view, we are planning to hold a number of meetings over the next 12 months. Every 3 months, we want to get together for 2 days and really explore some of these potentials. And we are calling that the point of view process, and we will ask a number of you to be part of that process. So please wait for the invitation in the post, and we would be delighted if you have time for that. But with that, with the point of view process, we are going to link that with what we are initiating with David and Maria. And I think that could be really good linkage in a way, kind of the more general picture of Rotary and its work and how we can work together, but more specifically with the project we are initiating for David Fishman. And there is going to be kind of like mapping and the prioritization of the way forward. So I want to just conclude by saying that this is about magnifying impact of those 2 institutions, the Carter School and Rotary. And this is about identifying ways of working together. So it's wonderful that Arthur Romano is one of our faculty and is a Rotary Peace Fellow. So we have that sort of organic starting point. But in that, and I think this is going to be really important, we can really identify new directions in peace education, in conflict prevention, in peacemaking. Critical questions like, how can we mobilize these thousands of Rotary clubs more effectively for peacemaking and peace building? How can we work with Rotary International, for example, and its different programs as Carter School, so that that would be really great opportunities of scaling up. Right now, most of things that I'm talking about here today have all big question marks at the end. And I think that's how it's supposed to be, because we want to go step by step carefully, and we want to make decisions based on evidence. We want to involve key Rotarians, key Rotary actors in the process, so that we can actually understand what they want from this process. Because as I said, Rotary has already got so much going, in that space. We need to really sort of find the clear justification and way forward of this partnership. So, Rich, I think that's more or less what I want to say from my perspective and
That's
how
great.
I see this partnership could work out. And I think we have now time for questions, so that perhaps that may be the way of like building the
Yes,
conversation.
thank you, Alp. That's exactly right. I think you hit all the important points, and I'm glad you stopped when you did, because we have half an hour left about, and there are 30 of you and 30 minutes left, so that gives you some idea of how long these your remarks should be. They don't have to be questions; they can be comments. You can say whatever you like to say, and there is a hand raising function. So I'll call on people in the order in which I see hands. All right. First, Dr. Denton, Richard Dent. Nice to see you here.
Thank you very much, Professor Richard Rubenstein. I think the connection between the two, Carter School and Rotary, would be tremendous. I think where Rotary excels is in projects that are hands-on in terms of education on the ground. Peter Kyle did not mention his great work with high school students up and down the Eastern Seaboard, teaching high school students about peace. We have another Rotarian, Tom Sawyer, who's teaching high school students in Belgium about the dangers of nuclear weapons. We are working with partners such as World Beyond War, which is doing pilot studies on, again, on education and peace. So I think there is that aspect. I think also just again, as mentioned, we're doing peace building clubs, peace building districts around the world. And so again, education and teaching people about the connections between the environment and the dangers of the military. So I think those would also be should be added. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Chip House has a hand up. Chip is, as you probably know, is one of the great authorities in our field. He's been a visiting scholar with us for a while. And so we're delighted to have you. Chip, go ahead.
Oh, Rich. I just want to raise, as a new Rotarian in the last 6 months, I guess, to my shock, I've been blown away by how game-changing some of its initiatives are. And I'd even forgotten that Arthur had been a Rotary Peace Fellow, which should have gotten me ready for this. But there are at least 3 things people in this audience should be aware of. One, Richard just mentioned, which is the project that Peter should take a lot more credit for, which is something that involves the entire Middle Atlantic and Southeast regions of Rotary, called Youth Peace in Action. And I put a link to that in the chat. It's a remarkable project that we at AFP are involved in, and is not, from what I can tell, terribly engaged in the DC area. But Bill, you might disabuse me of that. The second is the Rotary E-Club for World Peace that my wife and I now attend every Tuesday, which I also put I didn't put the chat link in, but David Wick did. It's a group that exists totally virtually. It's a Rotary club. And though I think of myself as being way too left-wing for Rotary, I probably sit in the ideological middle of that club. And Rich has spoken to it. And it's very active in things like World Beyond War and other connections, work at the UN. And finally, it's a shame Al couldn't get here today, because we're involved with him very much on the periphery, but the Portland Rotary clubs writ large have been working on a racial healing project in the city of Portland, which along with Minneapolis had one of the toughest 2020s in the country. And what struck both Gretchen and me is just how willing the Rotarians are, most of whom are upper middle class folks like me of my age, how willing they've been to go out into the community and listen and use their expertise, typically as business leaders, to help young people of color begin to figure out how they can build their own businesses. And so this is the first I've heard about what Mason is trying to do with Rotary, but I would love to be involved. And all of these Rotary initiatives are open for anyone in this call to be involved in. And I put my email in the chat. If you have any interest, just let me know.
Well, that's terrific, Chip. Thanks very much. Dennis Wong has a hand up. Go right ahead.
No, thank you very much. I've been a Rotarian for about 16 years. So, I've seen a few things going on. And I think one of the powers of Rotary has been also its selection of making decisions on what to do. You can't do everything. And one of the things that I think in the disease prevention and treatment area, Rotary picked polio. It didn't pick malaria. It didn't pick other diseases. So it focused. So we're having an impact on a particular area. And again, it's soon to be eliminated. I think we might look at that also in this whole idea of peace building and conflict prevention. There's many things that we can do. Some of our Rotarians are involved with the world free of nuclear weapons, the elimination of nuclear weapons, which is an existential threat to civilization. Other people might be interested in, and I like what I think Arthur mentioned about racism. Another area, which you're looking at, if you're looking at also International Day of Peace theme this year, it's End Racism, Build Peace. So I think my suggestion is consider picking one or two areas where we can focus, and also then you can measure and make an impact. And of course, I hope that one of the things considered is a world free of nuclear weapons by 2030 to prevent nuclear wars. But there might be others that within the Carter School where people have expertise, and also join with the Rotarians on focusing on one or two things where you can have a goal, can measure, and move forward. So that's a thought as far as this particular relationship. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. We appreciate that. Anybody else like to make a comment? We have some people here I know have much in their minds.
Rich, I think David Wick has his hand up.
I didn't see that, please.
Metaphorically
Yeah,
and
now I
physically.
see it. Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm really thrilled and excited about this opportunity and coming together, laying the foundation as has been expressed. And one of the things I think is critical as this evolves, and I thank you very much, we're talking about transformational. And that's the challenge in moving from where we are to how we come together in evolving, in evolution, in terms of moving out of the quote silos in many ways. The International Day of Peace has become Peace Week, has also become Peace Month. There's hundreds of organizations that I'm also connected with his Peace Through Unity. There's a whole big thing of people that are on the ground moving with that. At noon or 12:30, I'm going to be part of the Global Compact. It's a 3-day conference with the United Nations Global Compact, which is working with the business sector, the relationship of business and United Nations and so on. And what the challenge is, what is the communication, what is the platform that we're going to be able to work from, how to have it as broad and inclusive as possible, and also to have it being on a level of communication where it really reaches many, many people. I think that's a huge part of it's not only mindset shift, but also our technological, our communications ability to broader engagement throughout the world. And absolutely right. Rotary is ideal in so many ways because of being throughout the world. And at the same time, Rotary itself is growing in its peace building understanding. And many of us in the Rotary E Club of World Peace see that everything that Rotary does is about peace and peace building. So in the areas of focus, peace building through disease prevention and treatment, peace building through sanatorium. They're not just separate, great services, but it's all about peace building. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. And I just, I remembered, I should have told you this before. I should have mentioned to everybody that this session, like all of our sessions, is recorded, is being recorded. So I don't think anybody said anything actionable yet. But if you may keep that in mind, if you want to keep it in mind, it's there will be a recording, and an recording will be made available to people who would like to see it after a while. So the next hand up was Melvin Hardy.
So I seek to represent some of the interests of a community that might lie outside of the institutions. There are many of us who concern ourselves with all of those matters implicated by the discussions that each of you have provided for us today. And for those of us in civil society who concern ourselves with the issues of nuclear weapons, abolition, those of us who concerned ourselves with the issues of peace building that might reflect itself in lowering the excessive force against peoples in our communities, the matters of poverty reduction, anything that's implicated in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are many of us in civil society that are also that are interested. So this partnership between the Carter School for Peace and Rotary International is a very welcome one. And to the extent that I would be allowed to, through my affiliation with Dean Özerdem, I would seek to advance the coalition building with community groups to the extent that I can. And I'm honored to be participating in this Peace Week activity.
Thank you so much for those comments. Appreciate them. And Giselle Ober, haven't seen you in a long time, and glad to see you today.
Glad to see you, Rich, and glad to see many of my colleagues there, and also new colleagues that will be joining with this partnership. One of the comments that you were sharing about the need in these times of thinking, imagining, and promoting new partnership is crucial. Yes, I agree that we live in a very specific, critical times, and we need to think about new ways of partnership, coalitions within different groups, within sectors, public and private, NGOs and other organizations. It is difficult and challenging, but I think with the challenges that we are facing today, that's the only option that we have. The other thing that I wanted to comment, just to put in the agenda, and perhaps that can be also considered in your themes or subjects when the collaboration is being discussed, is that we are facing a big number of migration and social problems associated with them. All kind of crisis, human crisis, because as many of the reports, the international reports are showing, we are facing with the biggest displacement of people due to conflicts. So migrations within the countries and across the countries should be also one theme that should be considered. Thank you. And nice seeing you, Rich.
Thank you, Giselle. That's a great idea too. Thanks very much. Further comments, questions, comments? Yeah.
Rich, if
Yeah,
may I jump in?
Absolutely.
So this has been a very rich discussion, as would be expected with a facilitator whose name is Rich. So thank you, Rich, for all that you've done. Sorry, that was perhaps inappropriate. I just wanted to say that, as has been noted, there are 1.4 million Rotarians, and there are 1.4 million opinions on what Rotary should do or should not do. And everyone has their pet area of interest. For myself, in terms of this emerging partnership, and I'm speaking in a personal capacity, not on behalf of Rotary, I would like to invite the Carter School to consider how does Rotary formulate a peace building agenda, given our strengths, given our scope, given our demographics, given our financial position, given our relationship with community, local communities and so on. What is the process by which we can develop our peace building agenda? What should that agenda be? And how do we develop the agenda? If the Carter School can help guide us along those lines, I think that would be a tremendous step forward. And as I listen to the Dean, I think he and I are on the same wavelength. I think that's what I was reading in his remarks. So I put that out there. How can the Carter School help Rotary optimize its impact on the world in the peace building arena in particular?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I was going to say, even before you said that if you were in a class of mine, if all you were in a class of mine and we were about to end the class, I think I would send you home with an assignment, a question, which is, given that the Rotary does not want to be involved in politics. I want to put the politics in quotes. That is to say, it's clear that they don't, that the organization doesn't want to be dragged into day-to-day organized partisan politics, and therefore has in some sense an apolitical orientation. But given at the same time that everything that we've spoken about here is political in a broad sense. We've talked about nuclear weapons, we've talked about community development, we've talked about war and peace, and you can't talk about any of those things really without dealing in some sense with politics. Then how do we define politics in such a way as to satisfy the organization's need to not be dragged into the minutiae of partisan politics, and not to take sides in a partisan way in the kinds of politics that are splitting the society more and more, but nevertheless be effective in an arena which is, in a general way, inherently political. I think that really means, I think, challenging this distinction between the political and the apolitical. Don't you think so? Everything, in a sense, is political, but we have to understand that our colleagues don't want to be taking sides in the kinds of political disputes that have made life so difficult for so many people. So that's sort of the assignment I've given myself, to try to think that through, because I think a reconceptualization of the political is what's called for, which will be very interesting for us to talk about it, among other things, as time goes on. So anybody want to get the last word in? They're welcome, including Alp. I want to give Alp the chance to close this as well. Anyway, Dennis, you want to say something quick?
Yes, I think there's a difference, and look at the Carter School, between policy and politics. I think we should get involved with policy making, which is really, in a sense, of trying to do what the right thing is to do, and let the politicians decide there what to vote on. But also policies could be based on the Rotary values and principles. And I think that's the key thing that we also bring to the party. Our policies, values, and principles to do good policies that will be beneficial to all concerned. So I think that's the thing, difference between policy and politics.
That's a great start to that discussion. Thank you for that.
I
Alp,
like that too. That
Alp,
was
would
good.
you like to close? Alp, are you there?
Okay, thank you, Rich, and thank you, everyone. Really great feedback, and I've been taking notes like there is no tomorrow, and I just want to capture everything that's been said. And so it's really helpful. And basically, the last question and what Dennis once just said, the distinction between policy and politics. Yes, like conflict prevention and peace building are ultimately political processes, either with the small p of power relations or capital P of partisan politics. There is no escape from that. But nevertheless, I think we can really pitch the Rotary's work under the umbrella of peace in different ways, and policy level is, I think, is one of them. And but as Peter Kyle mentioned, I'm really imagining this whole optimization in a way that Rotary, with its thousands of clubs, 1.4 million members, well, isn't that a force to form new alliances for peace? So perhaps we haven't really defined what that would look like. But for example, one of the typical non-traditional potential peace-building actors would be the business sector. We don't really see the business being an active role in this space, right? We talk about state actors, civil society organizations, to some extent, kind of the faith-based organizations, so on and so forth, but not necessarily the business sector. And considering that, like the peace and business are so symbiotic in many ways, and peace could be peace economy could be such a an interesting way of looking at this. So Rotary, with its members and clubs throughout the world, could be a great catalyst to form these alliances, and that wouldn't necessarily be political with a capital P, partisan politics, right? So I think we can do that conceptualization in an innovative way throughout this process. But I'm really excited about what we just heard at the soft launching of this process, and I'm looking forward to coming back to you many times in due course and getting your feedback as much as possible, because we will need that. I'd like to thank all my friends from Rotary for making this a reality for us, this partnership, the potential partnership we are talking about. And thank you all for believing in peace, all these participants in this meeting. You are here because you want to do something about that optimization, scaling up, really handling those global challenges of peace and security in a different way. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much. And Rich, over to you.
Alp, thank you too. And let me just say exactly what Alp said. Thank you all for being here. And I think I also want to say thanks most of all to David Fishman, without whom this would not have happened, and also to Mary Clark. Our thoughts are with you, David.
Yes, David. Thank you so much. You really have
Yes.
done so much.
Thanks, everyone.
I just want to echo what Dean Özerdem said in terms of the business connection. That's what President Sheikh Mehmet spoke about in Houston, and that's reflected in action recently, increasingly. the CEO of Patagonia has just announced his business purpose is now the environment. We need more business community people recognizing the urgency of that to begin the process of discussion and creativity that Özerdem just mentioned.
For sure, for sure. Thank you, David. We'll leave the last word with you. And good luck, everybody, and we'll hope to see you soon. Talk to you soon. Thank you for being here.